So around when I first got diagnosed with kidney disease and I ended up on dialysis, like there's a lot of things that they don't tell you. Now I've mentioned this in previous videos, but the main talking point of this video is fluid management, right? Watching your fluids. You'll hear that as a dialysis patient. You will hear that all the time from everybody, nurses, techs, doctors. Everyone's going to tell you to watch your fluids. That's a real thing. If you take in too many fluids, you go into a state called fluid overload. And that is not a fun position to be in. So when I first got sick, right before I realized that it was kidney disease, I was fluid overload. And there's a lot of different things that come along when that happens. You feel awful. There's edema. Your legs or certain body parts will start to swell with excess fluid. The big one for me is you'll start to have trouble breathing because of the excess fluid around your organs, your lungs. It got so bad for me one time that the fluid around my organs inside my body, the excess started to like permeate into my lungs, taking blood with it. So I was like spitting up blood. So every person is different. Fluid collects in people differently. So for me, my fluid doesn't accumulate in my ankles, but rather it stays in my abdomen. So when I'm like going over on fluids, like my abdomen tightens and it stays like inside my chest, my body cavity. So in my case, I'm fortunate enough where my kidney function is very minimal, but I still do have it. So I still do urinate, but it's not enough to make that much of a difference if I'm like way over when it comes to fluids. So imagine if you are an individual whose kidneys have completely shut down and they don't work and you make no urine, there's no relief. You're not eliminating any fluids out of your body. They just stay inside. And that can cause a lot of damage. It causes your heart to have to work harder, which can lead to a lot more complications. So to avoid fluid overload, how much water are you prescribed to drink in order to avoid that in a day? Well, it depends, right? So like larger people have the leeway of drinking more than like a smaller person. And these are all things I had to figure out myself. Like nobody told me any of this stuff of like how much estimated, water could I drink. So I discovered over time about 32 ounces of is water is like the estimated amount of water that you should be intaking. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. So that's where the perpetual state of being dehydrated, that's where it comes from. Because as a dialysis patient, your body is not getting the adequate amount of water that it needs. Now, I understand it'd be easy just to say, oh, to hell with it. I'm just going to drink however much, and just do whatever I want. But fluid restriction is very much a real thing, and it should be taken very seriously. So if you go to the hospital for fluid retention because of fluid retention and you can't breathe, they're going to give you oxygen. And if they can't give you oxygen, they're going to intubate you. And you don't want that. Intubation is they put the tube down your throat so that way you can breathe, and you don't want that. With me, over years and years of doing this, you can feel it coming on, right? I can tell the difference between when I'm not approaching fluid overload and when I'm getting closer, right? Like my abdomen will start to get tighter. I'll start to have a harder time breathing. And that's when I know that I've gone over too much and I need to either slow down or stop. I totally get it. Like I went from drinking like a gallon of water, in like 2 days to 32 ounces. So what does that look like? I'm thirsty constantly. I constantly want to drink way more than I should. And I have to fight that temptation on a regular basis.